The Hot To Go singer acknowledged that she doesn't agree with how the Democratic Party has dealt with the war in Gaza, while also speaking out against Republican policies. Roan has regularly advocated for trans rights. That does it for today. We will be back with another edition of America Decides tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report with John Dickerson starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report for September 25th, 2024. I'm John Dickerson. The president of Ukraine pleads with the United Nations for attention, weapons, and the permission to use them deep inside Russia. How desperate are conditions inside Ukraine? Tomorrow, he'll meet with Biden to present him a peace plan. What's in it? Former ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor, will be here to help us with those questions. The Secret Service needs some kind of help. A Senate report on the failures in the Butler, Pennsylvania assassination attempt, they're head-scratching. There's a storm in the port. A major strike at East Coast ports might tangle up the supply chain again. Plus, Hurricane Helene now is one. We'll try to understand why carjackings are up when all other crime is down. And we'll talk to a group of mayors from across the Western Hemisphere about the challenge of immigration. And finally, the beatings will stop once the fishing improves. New research shows that octopuses work with fish to hunt, but they're really bossy. The Daily Report starts in a moment. We'll get to those stories in a minute, but we have some expected news taking place at the moment. As expected, Congress has passed a short-term government funding bill to avert a government shutdown next week. The bill will push the deadline for shutdown to after the 2024 presidential election. In addition to extending federal funding through December 20th, the bill would also increase the Secret Service's budget by $231 million. We turn now to a plea from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to the United Nations General Assembly.
I want peace for my people, real peace and just peace. And I'm asking for your support from all nations of the world. We do not divide the world. I ask the same of you, do not divide the world. Be united nations. And that will bring us peace.
Zelenskyy asked member nations not to forget Ukraine amid escalating conflict in the Middle East. He also claimed Russia is planning to attack Ukraine's entire power grid, leaving Ukrainians to freeze in the dark as the conflict approaches its third winter. On Thursday, Zelenskyy meets with President Biden to present what he calls his victory plan. He will also meet separately with Vice President Kamala Harris. The Ukrainian president had planned on meeting with both presidential candidates, but his visit with former President Donald Trump is unlikely to happen after Zelenskyy told The New Yorker that Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, is, quote, too radical for saying that Ukraine should give up its territories to Russia. The Ukrainian president also suggested Vance should read up on his World War II history. This all comes as the United States announced additional aid for Ukraine on Wednesday. Defense officials say the first of the new military aid packages will total $375 million. However, weapons shipments will be delayed because the U.S. is unwilling to send the long-range missiles that Ukraine wants and only has a limited supply of the weapons the U.S. is willing to provide. Later this hour, former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine William Taylor will join us for more analysis on President Volodymyr Zelenskyy's speech at the UN and his plan to win the war against Russia. Hurricane Helene has intensified from a tropical storm, churning at Category 1 towards Florida's Gulf Coast. The storm is expected to make landfall Thursday. According to the National Hurricane Center, it'll reach Florida as a Category 3 storm with winds of up to 115 miles an hour. Ahead of the storm's arrival, Governor Ron DeSantis has expanded an emergency declaration to 61 of Florida's 67 counties. Evacuation orders are also in place for 13 counties. CBS News and national correspondent Manuel Bajorquez joins me from Tampa, Florida. Manny, Helene has intensified very quickly. What does that mean, and what do conditions just look like right now?
Yeah, there is a lot of concern for a very wide area given the size of the storm. So even though the eye will pass parallel to the Tampa area, we're still expecting pretty heavy impacts here from storm surge and tropical storm force winds. We're at Tampa General Hospital. What you see behind me is a temporary barrier called an aqua fence. This has been established around the ground level. It is designed to stop storm surge from impacting the basement and first floor of the hospital. Why is that important? Well, this is a level 1 trauma center. It cannot shut down. It cannot evacuate patients. It must stay open all the time, no matter what the storm does. And you might be able to make out right here is the bay and the water. It's close. This is an island, and that's why even far from where the eye is expected to come ashore, there is this much concern already, and the time to prepare is, of course, running out.
And what about some other kinds of preparations that people might be making in advance of this? That's amazing what they've constructed there. How else are people preparing?
Yeah, obviously not just hospitals preparing, but people in their individual residences. We do know that in Pinellas and Hillsborough and other of the counties that make up the greater Tampa Bay area, there are mandatory evacuation orders now in place for low-lying coastal areas. So they wanted to give people as much time as possible to get out, because soon, in just a matter of hours, really, we could start to see the first impacts, and that storm surge would make some of the roads impassable. So those are some of the other preparations that are underway right now. Others who don't have to evacuate have been filling sandbags, just trying to make sure that they can protect their property.
Manuel Bojorquez, thanks so much, Manny. For more on Helene's path and timing, meteorologist Alex Wilson from our partners at the Weather Channel joins us.
Well, Helene is going to bring some major problems to parts of the Florida coastline as well as interior sections of the southeast United States. Look at the potential wind threat, over 110-mile-per-hour wind gusts into portions of the Big Bend area of Florida. So winds will be potent, 74 to 110-mile-per-hour winds edging into south central parts of Georgia. And then beyond that, western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, eastern Tennessee could see gusts and winds of tropical storm force. So down trees, widespread all across the southeast from landfall location into interior sections. Storm surge. This is the most life-threatening part of the storm, 12 to 18 feet in places like Cedar Key. So if you have been told to evacuate, you need to get out. And then there's the rainfall, flash flooding likely all across the southeast, including portions of Florida, all the way up into the mountains of western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, northeast Georgia, where we could get a foot to a foot and a half of rain. For more in-depth coverage, watch the Weather Channel on cable and now live on your favorite TV streaming device.
Alex Wilson, thank you. Wednesday, a top Israeli military commander warned for the first time that it was possible Israel may launch a ground invasion against Hezbollah in Lebanon. For more than a week, Israel has been launching repeated attacks targeting the Iranian-backed militant group. Lebanese officials say more than 600 people have been killed and thousands of residents have been displaced. The United States has been urging Israel to reach a diplomatic solution instead of escalating its attacks on Hezbollah. But Israel maintains that it wants militant fighters to withdraw from an area not far from the Israeli-Lebanese border. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israel returned the bodies of 88 Palestinians killed in its military offensive there. Palestinian officials claim there was no information about the victims' ages, names, or locations where they died. The territory's health ministry has refused to bury them until Israel discloses those details. A new report from a Senate committee says the security failures during the July 13th assassination attempt on Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, were preventable. The report from the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee outlines 5 key failures of the Secret Service on that day, including a lack of communication about a suspicious person at the rally. The report details how one countersniper saw law enforcement officers running with their guns drawn towards the shooter. But for at least 3 minutes after the shooter was first spotted, Donald Trump remained an open target. CBS News national security contributor and former Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism at the Department of Homeland Security, Sam Vinograd, joins me now. Sam, what surprised you most about the findings in this report?
Well, John, really 2 big surprises. The first is having worked so closely with the U.S. Secret Service for several years. I was shocked to read in this report that many of the agents interviewed failed to take responsibility for what happened that day. The lack of individual responsibility during the interviews by the committee as part of this report was truly shocking. And second, having been involved with the Secret Service and operational planning, I was also shocked that the basic security playbook for securing protectees at large, pre-planned outdoor gatherings really was thrown in the wastebasket here. The basic tenets of operational security planning were not implemented starting on July 3rd when this site was picked, all the way through the advance process, and then carrying through the actual day of this campaign rally. And so the basic foundational blocks of security planning, the basic playbook, were not implemented here.
And when you read that, Sam, did you think, wow, they didn't even have the basics? There is a fundamental problem here? Or did you think this was just a series of bad screw-ups related to this one July 13th event?
Reading this report and listening to Acting Director Ron Rowe and reading the findings from the U.S. Secret Service's own mission assurance review, it is clear that the basic critical infrastructure needed to secure these kinds of events was lacking for this event and ostensibly, potentially, for others prior to it. The U.S. Secret Service has said that they have implemented changes, but John, as a security professional, I can tell you that without a clear command and control structure, without a clear set of communications, without a comprehensive initial police briefing with all law enforcement partners, and without requisite training and resources, protective missions are really doomed for failure. So it does appear that there are systemic issues within the Secret Service, and I was heartened to hear Acting Director Ron Rowe take responsibility and pledge to mitigate them.
I want to ask you now about another set of threats related to former President Trump. His campaign has been briefed by intelligence officials on threats from Iran. How does that strike you, that news?
Wholly unsurprising that the Trump campaign continues to be briefed about threats to Mr. Trump by Iran. I worked with the Secret Service, the FBI, and others on Iranian threats to Mr. Trump and other former Trump administration officials, based upon, in large part, Mr. Trump's decision to assassinate Qasem Soleimani in Iran during Mr. Trump's administration. It is wholly unsurprising that these threats are ongoing to Mr. Trump's physical safety, and the U.S. Secret Service has to factor in threats from countries like Iran to Mr. Trump, as well as lone actors and small groups of individuals here in the United States that may be activated to try to harm him. And so the U.S. Secret Service is facing a complex and fluid threat environment, and they're having the resources they need to do their jobs, as well as the systemic mitigation measures that we just discussed, John, in place to mitigate any failures is really crucial in this threat environment.
Sam Vinograd, thank you very much, Sam.
Thanks.
Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump campaigned Wednesday in the battleground states. Harris traveled once again to Pennsylvania, outlining her economic plans to help boost the middle class before taping an appearance with MSNBC, where she, unsurprisingly, attacked her opponent. Trump was in North Carolina talking about jobs and American manufacturing. This is his second visit to the southern state in the past 5 days. His polling indicates that the state, which hasn't gone to a Democrat since 2008, has grown competitive since Harris received the Democratic nomination.
So to the workers of this state, when you hear Kamala Harris attack my tariffs today, you wouldn't have anything left in this state if I didn't do what I did. This building would be now shuttered, closed, empty, no jobs, and now it's thriving. We're going to do the same thing on a very large scale for our country.
Tariffs aren't unique to President Trump. President Biden has tariffs in place. He's actually looking to potentially implement more. Where do you come out on? Is there a good tariff, a bad tariff?
Well, part of it is you don't just throw around the idea of just tariffs across the board, and that's part of the problem with Donald Trump. Frankly, and I say this in all sincerity, he's just not very serious about how he thinks about some of these issues.
As a reminder, CBS News will host a vice presidential debate between Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz. That'll be this Tuesday, here in New York. We'll have live coverage on CBS, CBS News 24/7, and Paramount Plus. That's starting at 4 p.m. NFL stadiums have hosted countless football games and concerts. Now, some of them will provide safety during times of disaster. That's why FEMA is teaming up with the NFL to convert stadiums into emergency shelters, hospitals, and facilities. Stadiums are closed. They are close to major roadways, transportation hubs, and critical services like hospitals. 73% of NFL venues are also accessible by mass transit, allowing underserved populations to access emergency facilities. They also have food, water, medical care, crowd management, and they are compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, which means they can support people with disabilities in times of need. New Jersey, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Washington have all signed on. During Hurricane Katrina in 2005, more than 20,000 people sheltered in the Superdome. And in New York during COVID-19, the stadiums were also used. An engineer with the National Transportation Safety Board says there were noticeable issues with the hull of the Titan submersible that imploded on a mission to see the wreckage of the Titanic. Engineer Don Kramer told a Coast Guard investigative panel Wednesday there were wrinkles and gaps in the carbon fiber used for the ill-fated vessel. His testimony came one day after a pilot brought in to provide an expert opinion on submersibles said the implosion did not come as a complete shock.
The definition of an accident is something that happened unexpectedly and by sheer chance. There was nothing unexpected about this.
5 people were killed in the implosion, including the co-founder of OceanGate, the company that owned the doomed submersible. Still to come from Chicago to South America, mayors from separate countries gather to address each city's unique issues surrounding immigration. Plus, scammers overseas target Americans' hearts and their wallets. The CBS News undercover investigation pulls the curtain back for a glimpse into the origins of online romance scams. You're streaming The Daily Report.
These are the stories
1, 2, 3, go!
Of we, the people.
We're trying to generate our own hope.
It's a huge deal.
I'm enabling them to feel valued.
Eye on America. Weeknights on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides. Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Exclusively on CBS News 24/7, the streaming home of CBS News.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois
that don't need to be living there.
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
Haitian group in Springfield, Ohio, has filed citizen criminal charges against former President Donald Trump and his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. The Haitian Bridge Alliance says it filed the charges over threats experienced by residents since Trump spread lies at a presidential debate about immigrants eating pets. The group says its decision follows what it called inaction by the local prosecutor. The Trump campaign, which was repeatedly informed there was no evidence of the claim that the president and his running mate were making, responded to the latest charges, saying the former president was highlighting the country's failed immigration system. Missouri has executed a man convicted of a 1998 murder, despite calls for clemency and questions about the evidence in the case. Marcellus Williams died by lethal injection Tuesday evening after the Supreme Court denied a stay of execution. Williams was convicted in 2001 in the fatal stabbing of Felicia Gale, a former newspaper reporter. For years, he maintained he was innocent. The 55-year-old's attorney filed an appeal based on what they described as new evidence, including alleged bias in jury selection and murder weapon contamination. The victim's family also asked that Williams' life be spared. As we've heard from officials in Springfield, Ohio, the lure of new jobs brought in thousands of Haitian migrants and ended up stretching some city resources. Now, mayors from cities across the Western Hemisphere are getting together to share ideas and information on how to adapt to the growing population of immigrants in their cities. CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano spoke to some of the members of the mayor's migration task force, including the mayor of Chicago, who emphasized the importance of cohesion between governments in order to see the true benefits that migrants can provide.
So what is the economic impact of the growing immigrant population in Chicago? And would you say now in hindsight that it was good policy to bus migrants to cities that could have those resources and jobs like Chicago?
Well, the economic impact in the city of Chicago and around the globe is tremendous. What we have seen over the course of time, particularly in these United States, is that we're talking about trillions of dollars of investment. These individuals pay taxes, they actually contribute to our economy. They're not just workers, but they are taxpayers, right? As far as policy is concerned, the governor of Texas, his unwillingness to coordinate and cooperate with cities around America was actually quite irresponsible and dangerous. These individuals were being sent particularly to cities that were ran by Democrats and cities that were ran by individuals of color. So his intentions weren't pure.
It's not an issue exclusive to the U.S. In Bogota, Colombia, a city that has absorbed the greatest number of Venezuelan migrants anywhere in the world, the mayor says coordination with the national government could have a huge impact on his city.
But do you think your national government or the president of Colombia could have an impact in ensuring democratic governance in Venezuela and perhaps slowing the migration of people out?
I'm sure he has a great opportunity if he takes the decision to, or makes the decision to guarantee that there's a change in Venezuela. What happens, what Colombia says, what Colombia does has a huge impact in Venezuela, as well as what happens in Venezuela has a huge impact in Colombia. So I think that we have a responsibility, as a mayor, I have a responsibility also to represent those Venezuelans who are in Bogota, who are Bogotanos as well. So that's why I've been outspoken and saying that Colombia and Bogota should work to guarantee that there's a respect for the election, what happened, and for democracy, which is not happening right now. We don't have a respect for democracy in Venezuela right now, and that's what it's creating a new wave, or could create a new wave of migrants.
And for the mayor of a border city in Mexico, if current U.S. policies meant to ease the coordination of processing migrants, like the CBP One app, went away, he believes it could mean more problems for both countries.
Well, it will be disastrous for all of us, not only for the Mexican side, because a lot of economic development in this country, in the U.S., it begins from migrants. So if that happens, it will be disastrous for us, you know, for both economies.
Now to an in-depth look at internet romance scams targeting Americans. Men who believe they're speaking with women online are lured into sending them money. But as you're about to see, that money often ends up in the hands of young men in the West African nation of Ghana. CBS News foreign correspondent Deborah Pata reports on her year-long investigation into these operations for Eye on America.
Down a dusty alley in Accra, young men cast off their true identities as they enter this apartment. They call it their hustle kingdom. Meet Ghana's Yahoo boys, online fraudsters who swindle Americans out of millions of dollars by luring them into romance scams.
I go on online dating sites, find a male friend.
Abdullah, not his real name, is part of this syndicate that we filmed undercover. Late into the night, he scours online dating sites, preying on lonely older men over the age of 60, posing as this woman.
I'll go on Instagram, use a girl's picture. I pretended to be a girl, chat with him.
The scammers pretend to be white American women residing in the US, tricking men into falling in love with them. But these are small-time hustlers working for a boss who sets them up with phones, laptops, electricity and internet. And there are hundreds more underground boiler rooms just like this throughout Ghana.
And Deborah Pata joins me now. Deborah, what's the government of Ghana doing? Do they know this is happening, and are they doing anything to crack down on these criminals?
They're very aware that it's happening. In fact, there's an organized crime unit set up, and one of the things they deal with is this. But it's very difficult because the victims, particularly if they're men, do not want to report this. They're ashamed that they've been conned in the first place, and so they don't actually go to the police. And in fact, we'll be doing a second report tomorrow on one such victim. But in our report that will be in more detail on the CBS Evening News as well, we looked at how they set up these cons. They lure them into these romance scams by showering them with affection. They even hire escorts if the people that they're conning want a live phone call or a video call, or even actually a meeting with them. So they go to extraordinary lengths, preying on the elderly, the vulnerable, but it's all hidden out of sight and makes it very difficult for police to crack down on. So the Ghanaian authorities are having a very hard time dealing with this. And the case that we're going to report on only came about because the daughter reported it to the FBI, who then handed it over to Ghana.
Deborah Pata for Eye on America. Thank you so much, Deborah. Scrambling for shipping alternatives coming off the labor dispute that could jam the supply chain and jack up prices for consumers. You're streaming the Daily Report.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate. Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Get off
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original, 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to the Daily Report. I'm John Dickerson. Here's some additions to our top stories. Hurricane Helene strengthened Wednesday as it headed towards Florida's Gulf Coast. It's expected to make landfall late on Thursday. The storm is already bringing wind and heavy rain to parts of Mexico. Former FTX executive Caroline Ellison has been sentenced to 2 years in prison for her role in a multi-billion-dollar fraud scheme. Ellison pleaded guilty 2 years ago and testified against the founder of the cryptocurrency exchange, Sam Bankman-Fried, but the judge ruled her cooperation should not spare her from jail time. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy addressed the UN General Assembly Wednesday, warning that Russia is planning to attack his country's nuclear power plants. Zelenskyy called on member nations to stand together and also criticized Russia's veto power in the UN Security Council. For more on this, I'm glad to bring in Ambassador William Taylor. He's the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and the vice president of Europe and Russia at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Ambassador, it's good to have you again. As you have done so many times before, give us your assessment at the moment of the condition of the war and the Ukrainian people.
So, John, I was there for about a week. I got back about a week ago. And Ukrainian people have been fighting now for 944 days. The Ukrainian army has been fighting for that long against the Russians. They're tired. They're very tired, John. They have gained some momentum in the past month or so because they have taken the fight to the Russians, into Russia. They've been firing deep into Russia with their own weapons, their own drones. They've blown up an enormous ammo dump. So the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian military are feeling like they've got some momentum going on. President Zelenskyy, as you know, we'll probably talk about this, is here in the United States to make that case for the continuation of the support. So the battlefield you ask about, it's going as well as you could expect. That is, the Ukrainian army fighting for that long, outnumbered, outgunned, but holding them off for all this time, and they've gone into Russia. The Russians are taking back little by little, taking little more of Ukraine each day down in the east and in Donbass. And so it's a mixed picture there, but right now the Ukrainians are feeling a little bit better than they were the last time I was there when they were pretty down.
President Zelenskyy is going to meet with President Biden to talk about this peace plan. What might be different about such a plan than his idea of peace when this not long after the invasion started? I mean, is there something that might actually kick off a peace process?
What will kick off a peace process, John, is Putin's recognition, President Putin's recognition that he can't win this war. And he will come to that conclusion when it's clear to him that the Americans will continue to back the Ukrainians, when the Europeans will continue to back the Ukrainians, and when the Ukrainians show that they're going to continue to resist. President Putin's attacks on their electricity generation and distribution systems is making it miserable for Ukrainians. He thinks he can break the Ukrainians. So far, he's not having that luck. So what can change? Yes, is his recognition that he can't win.
So Then, keeping that very much in mind, President Zelenskyy urged world leaders not to seek an out from Russia's war, which to me sounds like him saying, stay with us, stick with us. And then I'll add to that, the Republican nominee for president doesn't seem that anxious to support Ukraine. His running mate seems even less so. So if I'm Putin, I'm going to hang on for a little while, it seems, if the Europeans are seeking an out and the possible new American president might not be interested.
So you're right. President Zelenskyy is urging his allies, the Americans, the Europeans, to stick with him because you're also right. Putin's only strategy is to wait us out, hope that one side, either the Americans or the Europeans or the Ukrainians, will break. He thinks he can wait us out. But if when he realizes that that's not a winning strategy, then he's going to be able to look for a way out. He's made a mistake, and he needs to find a way out of that mistake.
Finally, Mr. Ambassador, tell me your thoughts about what President Zelenskyy mentioned in terms of these attacks on the nuclear power plants and the grids. What's the fragility of the power situation, and is that a real threat, and what could that mean?
It's a real threat. If the Russians were to bomb one of the several Ukrainian nuclear power plants, it could be a disaster. It could be a disaster for the local environment, but it could be a broader disaster. We know that radiation spreads when there's an explosion, when there's an accident, and this would be an explosion caused by a Russian attack. So President Zelenskyy is right to be concerned about that. So far, the nuclear power plants that are not occupied by the Russians, the biggest nuclear power plant is occupied by the Russians in Ukraine, but the ones that aren't have been able to continue to generate power. And the Russians have gone after the coal-fired plants and the gas-fired plants and the distribution to make the Ukrainians cold and dark. And if he were to also go against these nuclear power plants, it would be a disaster for electricity in Ukraine.
Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor, we're grateful, Mr. Ambassador. Thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, John.
Major shipping ports along the East Coast could shut down as early as next week due to a labor dispute. Tens of thousands of dock workers have threatened to go on strike if their union can't reach a deal to renew their contract with the operators of those ports. In a statement to members last week, the executive vice president for the International Longshoremen's Association said, quote, "We will fight to the end for what we rightfully deserve," adding, "We are on the right side of history." Lisa Bartline joins us now. She is a transportation correspondent for Reuters. Lisa, thank you for being with us. What would the ripple effect be in the economy if these ports shut down?
It would touch most every business in the United States, importers and exporters, manufacturers, retailers, farmers. It would have broad reach.
And are we talking, what would kind of be the dominoes? So the ports shut down, are ships going to be just kind of languishing out in the sea? Trucks backing up with nothing to pick up? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, that's the West Coast ports would probably be overwhelmed. Which would cause jam-ups on rail and probably trucks on that side of the country. Then the East Coast and Gulf Coast would stop. And then when they restart, it would be sort of a delay. And the entire shutdown would sort of ripple through the entire U.S. or the global shipping network because they're on regularly scheduled sailings, and if it's like when one airplane gets delayed, everything else gets delayed. So it's sort of a multiplier effect of messes.
And have companies that rely on these ports, are they doing anything? Sometimes you can tell how serious a strike is by what the companies are doing to prepare for it. What are they doing to prepare for this potential strike?
Well, the U.S. imports have been booming in July and August, and a lot of that looks like it was based on people bringing goods in early to avert or to sort of work around any sort of shutdowns on the East Coast. And the West Coast is probably going to see, if this happens, the West Coast will see a bump in imports as well.
And Lisa, now to the actual facts of the case, what's the union asking for in these negotiations? And is it a huge ask, or what's how much are they asking for?
They're asking for 77%, my sources tell me, in terms of a wage increase, which I'm guessing is probably a negotiating tactic. The West Coast ports got a 32% raise, so they'll probably get something a little bit higher since they're starting at a little bit of a lower base. And they're also looking for some sort of job protections. I think that's what a lot of this talk about automation is about. There's always worries that if you automate a job, you lose a job, and you don't want your ranks shrinking.
Right. Finally, could the federal government play a role in this strike, and is it likely that they're going to come in?
We'll see. I mean, we're in the sort of final stretch now. They'd have to be invited in before that, and after that, there probably would be a tremendous pressure given the potential for damage to the U.S. economy. So I know that the Biden administration is really trying to stay hands-off. We've got an election coming up, and the vice president is obviously on the ticket. And Biden is a friend of labor. So I think they would prefer to have this settled before then. And I think the employers sound like they'd like to have negotiations or mediation, but I don't think the union wants that. So Monday night is the big tell.
We'll be watching. Lisa Bartline with Reuters. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
The union representing striking Boeing workers says its members aren't interested in the company's latest proposal. Boeing made a new offer this week for a 30% pay raise over 4 years. That's up from 25% in an earlier offer. The plane maker said the proposal was its, quote, best and final proposal, but a survey showed union members were overwhelmingly against it. Workers are seeking a 40% pay bump. More than 32,000 employees in the Seattle area and Portland, Oregon have been striking since September 13th, the union's first labor action in 16 years. Now to a digest of some foreign stories. The president of Ecuador has sent in armed forces to help fight a massive wildfire raging near the country's capital. People living in residential areas outside the capital have been forced to evacuate their homes. The fire comes as Ecuador deals with its worst drought in 60 years. There have been no reports of deaths or serious injuries. Deadly flooding, we got the other problem, deadly flooding across Central Europe this month was likely more intense due to the effects of climate change. That's according to a study from a London-based research firm focused on extreme weather events. The group found the 4 days of torrential rain was the heaviest on record for the region. The floods killed 24 people and damaged several homes and bridges. Sri Lanka's newly elected president Tuesday called for parliamentary elections to be held in November in a bid to consolidate power. The announcement comes after this weekend's upset election, which saw the Marxist leader of the win office amid an economic crisis. The party currently holds just 3 seats in Sri Lanka's 225-member parliament. New FBI data shows the rate of car thefts in the U.S. has hit a 16-year high. We'll talk to a former FBI special agent about what's driving the uptick. You're streaming the Daily Report.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
It can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
New data from the FBI shows that violent crime fell significantly in 2023, but motor vehicle thefts soared for the second year in a row. Overall, property crime fell nearly 2.5%. Burglary fell more than 7%. Larceny dropped by more than 4%. In a sharp contrast, though, motor vehicle theft increased by more than 12.5%, the highest rate on record since 2007. Daniel Brunner joins us now. He's a former FBI special agent and the president and co-founder of Brunner Sierra Group. Thanks for being with us. What do you make of this? Why are vehicle crimes up?
Well, I think that's a lot to do with two factors. There's a demand overseas for a lot of high-end vehicles. So, for example, if you have a vehicle that is taken in New Jersey or New York or somewhere along the coastlines, within hours, it has the GPS devices removed, and it has already probably inside a shipping container. And those shipping containers are going to overseas buyers. There's a large demand for a lot of these vehicles overseas, high-end vehicles. And the second, I believe, is a lot of this is a very easy crime, a very crime of opportunity. A lot of young kids like to do joyriding, so they'll steal a vehicle, utilize it to its best extreme, destroy it and have fun with it, and then they'll end the end of the night, the evening, and that for them it's a fun evening. But I think those are two things. It's crime of opportunity and demand overseas.
How do people steal cars these days? And shouldn't it be harder now that we've got all this fancy technology that makes it sometimes impossible to actually drive the car even when you own it?
Well, there's two things that really are a lot of things are happening. Is a lot of individuals, a lot of groups, such as Chilean organized crime entities and a lot of street gangs. What they're doing is they're entering homes that are either left, so they'll check the driveway, see if the vehicle is left unlocked. Sometimes people leave their keys in the car because out of habit or just necessity, they leave the keys in the car, and they're able to the thieves are able to drive off. So they'll quickly check the handle and see if they can get in. See if that. The second way they do is they will break into that first door. And traditionally, a lot of people, what do they do when first thing they come in through the garage door? Drop the keys right there. So they'll open that door, smash through the door, look for the car keys, and then they'll jump into the vehicles that are set right there in the driveway or in the garage. The next thing to do is carjacking, traditional carjacking. They jump out of a car that is just moving or it's at a red light, and they will steal the car from somebody who's driving it. The keys may be in it already, so it's a necessity, and it's easy for them. A quick crime and quick turnaround.
Are car crimes not considered as big a deal, just in terms of the many things that police and FBI have to stay on top of? Are they not as high a priority as other kinds of crimes, those numbers that are going down?
Well, I think with the FBI, particularly, every crime affects the public and the members of the community. They're important, and there's no doubt about that. But the amount of carjackings which occur, for example, in Newark, New Jersey, a number of years ago, there was a tremendous spike in carjackings, and the FBI put together a task force which consisted of federal, state, and local law enforcement to combat this and to figure out what was going on at the bottom of it. And they eventually were able to see the carjacking ring. But those then carjackers or those thieves will shift their tactics and conduct different types of theft, the driveways, and then they'll enter to look for key fobs. Technology these days has tremendous advancements. A lot of these thieves now have technology where they're able to unlock doors and even start cars without even the keys. And once they're in the car, they rip the GPS out. It's very difficult to track them. And if a lot of people have those Apple AirTags, that's why as soon as they go into a container, a shipping container, that GPS signal is unreadable.
Final question is, I mean, you've given us some good advice. When you come inside, don't put your keys right next to the door. Anything else like that? And also, could car makers be making life a little harder for those who would want to steal cars?
Well, you have to look at it. It's a two-way road. I mean, making it life difficult for the carjackers, but then the consumer really wants ease. It really wants to get into their car and start it, go right away. And that's what the consumer wants. The consumer doesn't think about the cost or the possibility of being carjacked. So a lot of times they want ease. They want the push button. And the technology these days, obviously, that the criminals can use technology too. So yes, those things are, you have to balance the demands of the consumer versus the protection of the consumer. And again, also, as you stated perfectly, don't leave the car keys at the front door. Put them in a different location, make them a little bit more difficult. Then you have to balance it that then maybe those carjackers won't go into your home. So thinking twice, and definitely do not leave the keys in the car and close your garage doors every night.
Daniel Brunner, former FBI special agent and co-founder of the Brunner Sierra Group. Thank you so much, Daniel. Still to come, they make a good team until one of them falls out of line. How an octopus keeps his fish friends, or maybe they're just co-workers, in check. You're streaming the Daily Report.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are. Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to the Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen.
She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Coca-Cola's attempt to spice up their classic soft drink has failed. The company says it will pull Coke Spiced from store shelves just 6 months after introducing it as a permanent flavor. Coca-Cola didn't provide a reason for the discontinuation, but confusion about the soda's flavor has been prominent since its launch because Coke Spiced is not actually spicy, but rather a blend of the traditional flavor and raspberry. It's not the only flavor to get the axe. The company is also saying goodbye to cherry vanilla, Coke, and Diet Coke with Splenda. But never fear, soda drinkers. A spokesperson says a new flavor is in the works for 2025. If there is something strange in your neighborhood, you may be tempted to call Ghostbusters, or you could just handle it yourself with the help of the local library. Many branches across the country now have ghost hunting kits available to borrow. Most include an electromagnetic field reader, a voice recorder, and a spirit box, which is used to monitor radio waves for voices in the static. The kits are available all year round, though, not just for the spooky season. The extraordinary octopus has 8 tentacles capable of capture, investigation, and movement. Another ability? Punching. Take a look at this video from the depths of the Red Sea. It catches multiple instances of annoyed octopuses punching their fishy friends. The two creatures are known to work together while hunting, but scientists who conducted the study say the strikes are a kind of partner control mechanism when the fish are deviating from the plan. And you should see their mean emails. Here's a look at some of the stories we're covering in our next hour. One of the most anticipated speakers of the UN General Assembly takes the podium. More on Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and his message to the world. Plus, a new report details the Secret Service's failures to protect former President Donald Trump from a would-be assassin. The senators say the Pennsylvania attack was preventable. And Hurricane Helene barrels towards Florida. We'll have a report from the ground as the storm gets stronger. You're streaming the Daily Report.
These are the stories
1, 2, 3, go!
Of we, the people.
We're trying to generate our own hope.
It's a huge deal.
I'm enabling